We know it intellectually. But it's hard to get it through our stony, worldly hearts. God never runs out. We will never use up all that God has to offer us. Yet people have treated him from the dawn of time as though he were stingy. Look at the healing miracles in Mark today. Jairus' people acted like Jesus had to hurry up. For if the girl died before he got there, well, time was up. The woman with the discharge of blood snuck up and touched Jesus' hem as though Jesus might get angry at her for asking too much. Jesus is in command of life or death, and he gives us life. The people of Exodus were sent manna for food, and they were instructed to gather only what they needed for that day. Anything left over spoiled, because God would provide more when they needed more. And Paul reminds the Corinthians in our epistle for today, whoever gathered much had nothing left over, and whoever gathered little had no lack. And so it is still for us today. The more we hoard, the less we have. The more we give, the more God provides of everything. Money, healing, time, whatever it is. God loves to bless us. But if we hoard up what he gives us, we plug up the supply line. We have to use what he gives. For many years, when I was a kid, I dreamed of winning the Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes and becoming vastly rich. I used to spend hours filling out that packet of information that rivaled an IRS form. But then, as I grew older, I began to be less and less enamored of the idea. And I began to understand why I, as a child, loved that thought so much. I wanted vast riches because I didn't want to have to trust in God anymore. If I had millions of dollars in the bank, well, I would be forever secure. And I wouldn't need to worry about what God was providing or not providing, because my bank account would be providing just fine. Not only that, and here's the idea that really appealed to me. I would be able to be God. I would open my hand and magnanimously provide for all, and they would look to me. It worked in the Garden of Eden, and it still continues to work today. You will be like God. Just pay $1, pick 6 numbers, and you will be like God. But the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. God provides, not us. And God provides what is good for us and what we need. So if you don't have a vast fortune, you don't need a vast fortune. And chances are it'd be bad for you anyway. The lesson to learn is God never runs out. Well then, someone might say, why did I lose my house to foreclosure? Or why can't I pay my bills right now? I don't know. Maybe it's your own stupid fault. Maybe you were a bad steward. You need to learn a lesson. Or maybe it was no fault of yours at all. But rather the lesson is for somebody who's watching you and learning. Or maybe you just got caught in a bad situation in a sinful, broken world. But regardless of the reason, I can guarantee you, God will provide what you need. Now, you and I both know that we don't always agree with God, do we? We don't always agree with the way He does things. Sometimes He really irritates me. That's okay. We're sinful. Of course we're going to disagree with God. He's holy. Oil and vinegar, light and dark. The twain do not meet in this world. But agreeing or disagreeing does not change the reality that He is always right. And He never runs out. And He tests our faith daily. There will always be enough. And if we don't have something, it's because God knows we don't need it. And our only task is to take the resources we do have and to use them for His service and His glory. And if we're doing that, there's never going to be a lack. And if we're not doing that, there's never going to be enough. As we celebrate the 236th birthday of this nation, look at the way that God has blessed us. And not just us as a nation, but us here, right here at Trinity. And look at the sorry stewards that we have been. We have been given religious freedom. The ability to gather together to worship God anytime we want. We have been given that through God's hand, through the lives of many people who have died for that right. And yet, less than a third of us are gathered here on any Sunday to exercise that gift. We have been given so much that we throw away more food than most of the world has to eat. And yet, we have hungry children in our neighborhoods. We have been given the rich treasure of the Lutheran confessions, and I'm willing to bet that most of us have never even read them. No, you see, instead we'd rather worry about trade deficits and illegal immigrants and someone getting health care who doesn't deserve it. And we'd rather grouse and whine about teenagers eating too much at the coffee hour and children spilling crumbs on the floor and people at the 4th of July parade using our toilets. We make me sick. It's not ours, folks. It all belongs to God. This nation, this building, even our own homes. It's not our church. It's not our money. And it's not our lives. It belongs to God, all of it. And we're just the station managers. In 5th grade, I rose to the rank of Assistant Chief of the School Safety Patrol. And I was so proud of my achievement. No 5th grader had ever risen beyond the rank of captain, and only a handful had ever even made lieutenant. And here I was, second to the top post, with 50 patrolmen under me, guarding and protecting diligently 500 students at Mary Lynn Elementary School. And Mr. Hedger handed me the duty roster and my badge and told me that as of January, I was in charge of assigning all the duties and training the new captains. The chief led the patrol meetings, inspected and commended or disciplined the patrollers. But I was the assistant chief. I was the hands-on person that ran the whole show. And I became insane with power. I was a 5th grader that made Adolf Hitler look like Martha Stewart. The captains shuddered whenever I came near. The patrolmen wouldn't even speak to me. I wore my badge with arrogant pride. And guess what? Morale started to break down. Patrolmen started to quit. There were constant complaints to the chief. And of course, the chief constantly complained to the faculty sponsor, Mr. Hedger. And Mr. Hedger called me into his office after a while and asked me, "Hey, how's it going as assistant chief?" And I kept trying to think of how to put a good spin on it. And finally I told him, "It's awful." And I couldn't say much more because I was afraid I was going to cry in front of him. And he told me it was going to be okay. And it was eventually. And he began a process that went on for the rest of my life, teaching me about service. That we are here to use our God-given gifts to serve others and to glorify God. We are here to serve and not be served, to give and not be gifted, to proclaim the glories of God and not to stand around and admire the gleam of our own badges. And when we have that right, then things begin falling into place. Stress begins to diminish, and joy expounds exponentially. God never runs out. He simply flows through us. It began at our baptisms, and it continues the rest of our life. Today we are here to be filled up again with His Word and with His body and with His blood. But remember, we are only conduits. We are only filled so that we may pour out His love all week long and empty ourselves again. God never runs out. Not of time, not of talents, not of money, not of patience, not of love. But I challenge you this week to try to outgive Him. Try. You can't do it, but it's fun to try.